Now it's time to introduce the main speaker for tonight, Steve-O.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve. I'm an alcoholic. I'm entirely too excited about having a Rodeo speaker CD. And I was just talking to Dave right here. He's got this whole table of speaker CDs. And I'm like, no way. Is that Codependent Anonymous? These CDs he has. And he says, yeah. I'm like, well, what's the difference between that and Al-Anon? And he says, oh, well, these people they just want to have better relationships. And so they work the steps, but they can drink. And so I automatically thought, that might be the program for me. I could work the steps and get loaded, you know? Man, if I didn't say it, man, I'm an alcoholic and I suffer from alcoholism so badly. I do not have to wonder whatsoever if I belong here, you know? That, like, when I first heard somebody say that they were grateful for alcoholism, I kind of felt like I wanted to punch him in the face, I think. But if there's anything about alcoholism that I'm really grateful for, it's that I suffer from it so badly that I don't have to like boo-hoo about all the work, and I don't have to like really act. I'm so glad that I'm not on the fence, you know. With that said, I just had today was just, I felt particularly miserable today. And my sobriety date is March 10th of 2008. So I've got 4 years, 3 months and some change. And as the time goes on, I feel like my mind just gets more and more torturous. So it's just great to be here. Okay, I'll tell you what I was like before. I think, you know, I can really pretty well describe it just by telling you about the week before my intervention. I had asked this girl to marry me, and she thought I was kidding, you know, because I was such a mess. But like, I was such a mess that I thought I was serious, you know. And so when she came over and told me that she actually didn't want to get married, I just, you know, I kind of went crazy and I stormed out of the house, and you know, and like I went down to this bar, and I remember I think I had like 2 drinks and I was like blacking out. You know, some people say that the alcohol didn't work for them anymore, and like not me, man. Like I remember like blacking out after like 2 drinks, but then I did like I got a bunch of coke and a bunch of ketamine, and I had a bunch of pills, and you know, came home and with this crazy gangster guy, and I was bashing a hole through I had already bashed a hole through the wall of you know, into the neighbor's apartment, screaming at him, like, telling him I'm gonna kick your ass, because I had this gangster guy with me. And so the cops came to arrest me for vandalism. And when they showed up, they said, hey, we're arresting you right now. So, you know, I had no shirt, no shoes. They said, if you want to go put a shirt and shoes on, you know, we're taking you to jail. And I told them, screw that, I don't need, you know, a shirt. I could have very easily gone into my apartment and like taken the bag of cocaine out of my pocket and put on a shirt and shoes, but no, like I went to jail with no shirt, no shoes, and a bag of coke in my pocket. So, I mean, I was so blown out on ketamine, I didn't know what was going on. Like, and so they rearrested me there. I was in jail for like a day and a half, you know. I don't even know why, but I was in jail for a day and a half, and when I got out, I came home to a sign on my apartment right on the front door. It was like the get the hell out of here in 3 days kind of eviction notice, you know? And I was kind of like, well, whatever, you know? And I went in, I was so excited because I had all these drugs in there. And within like 2 or 3 hours, I was like jumping up and down on the roof of a parked car, like with just pocketfuls of like ketamine and cocaine and weed and like all this, you know, and like, and the officers that came over to the car were security officers, you know, not cops. I mean, like later, I was jumping up and down the roof of the car, like, I mean, I was unintentionally doing everything I could to go right back into jail 3 hours after I got out. I just had no control. I had no control over my actions at all. And really, I couldn't get through a day without doing any number of things that just brought about just such humiliation and shame and regret, you know. I mean, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, even though I was really pretty good at convincing myself that that all wasn't happening. You know, but in any case, I wound up back at my place, you know, so now I've got like, the next day is my last day in the apartment, and I've got to jump out of the window of my bedroom, and I want to ride a motorcycle off a ramp in the living room, out the sliding glass door, and jump onto the roof of the building next door, and I've got to do these stunts because there's only one more day. And so, so I send out like a mass email to like 100 people, which I was in the habit of doing pretty regularly. And I was like, you guys bring over, you know, cameras and something to land on. And, you know, if you don't, I'm jumping anyway. I'm ready to die. And I was like, so my friends were psyched on that email because it said right there, like, I'm ready to die. And I was like, it wasn't the only like suicidal sounding email that I had been sending around. So my buddies printed it up. I had told them to come over. They said sure, you know. And what happened was I scheduled my own intervention, you know. So my buddies show up, and I, you know, like it wasn't the kind of intervention where you have like a yes or no, you know, like, are you willing to go to rehab or no? You know, it wasn't like that. It was like, we are taking you to the hospital for a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation, you know? And the gist of it was that if I didn't like that, they were going to kick my ass and take me anyway. So I've never really been a fighter, you know? So I go to the Cedars-Sinai, and you know, I get there, and you know, I'm like spitting on people. You know, I was just and like that was how I'd answer questions. Oh yeah, you know, and like once I found out that I wasn't going to calmly explain to them that it was a misunderstanding, you know, like, and I was actually like going into the part of the hospital where you can't open the doors, and you know, then all of a sudden, like, I really kind of started freaking out, you know. I want to smoke a cigarette now, you know, like this whole thing. And I went and I like picked up a chair and I went to go throw this chair, like in my little temper tantrum in the, you know, in the psych ward, and I get like tackled by like security guards, you know, that came out of nowhere, and they like threw me down onto this like table bed kind of thing, and like jammed a needle in my butt cheek, you know. And then I took a nap. Like, that's totally what happened. I woke up and I was introduced to like the real like you know, psych ward, and I was even on like the something else wing. You know, they have like 2 wings. You know, there's like standard issue and then something else. You know, and so I was there, and I mean I remember going up to their like the little nurse station. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. You know, it was not the first time that lady heard that. You know, like, and after like 3 days, they moved me over to the standard issue wing, and I think it was like my 4th day, and that's like, oh yeah, they had changed my status from 5150 to 5250, meaning that they had me for 2 entire weeks. You know, like involuntary hold, which I'm so grateful for today. But it was like day 4 in the psych ward, and another patient was a heroin addict. He gave me a copy of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember thinking it was really weird, like, why is a heroin addict giving me a book about alcoholism? You know, like why would he even care in the first place, you know? And I just... To describe like succinctly what I was like, I was resigned to drinking and drugging myself to death. I mean, I just thought that was my lot in life. I considered my alcoholism and addiction an insurmountable issue, just something that whether, even if I tried to do anything about it, that it wasn't going to work. You know, like it was just, I couldn't do anything about it. I could try, but I was going to fail, you know, whatever. You know, like, I just didn't think that there was any hope for me. I thought I was an absolute lost cause. I felt like I was just so in the grips of drugs and alcohol that, you know, even if there was like some way to get better, that like I just didn't have the discipline. I was just so spoiled and just such, you know, I just didn't feel like it was possible. So I wasn't even gonna try. I don't think I ever had any real problem, you know, believing, you know, to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic drug addict. I just wasn't willing to do anything about it, you know? So when I was in that psych ward, one of these nights, and I was up, you know, late at night, and so I opened up the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did not open up that book to find a solution in the book, because like I said, I didn't think that there was a solution for me, period. I thought I was a write-off. And I was only reading the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to kill time, you know? And so I read it from the beginning. I remember the first thing is like the doctor's opinion. I probably went straight to the doctor's opinion. I remember reading that and getting this message from it that the more hopeless the case of the alcoholic, the bigger the chance there is for recovery. You know, and I hadn't really, maybe I don't know, I just hadn't thought, this is the first time I think that it occurred to me that I was like a real candidate, you know? Because the idea that the more hopeless we are, the bigger the chance there is for recovery, like, I don't know, that kind of spoke to me. Not that it made me willing at all to do anything, you know? But, you know, specifically in the doctor's opinion, it talks about like hopeless alcoholics who are determined to die, who went on to become sold on the ideas in the book and then became the finest specimen of man that you could ever hope to meet. And just the hopeless I could relate to. I could relate to hopeless. You know, I could imagine all kinds of people who were equally hopeless to me, but I couldn't really imagine anybody that was more hopeless, because you're just, you know, like I can't imagine a glass being less than empty. So, you know, like that's really what step one, I think, means to me, is like in my hopelessness, I found hope. That's like kind of how it is. Like hopelessness is like a prerequisite for hope, you know? We don't have any hope until we admit hopelessness. We don't have any power until we admit powerlessness. We don't have any strength until we admit we have no strength, you know? And today I'm just as hopeless and just as powerless and just as lacking, you know? But it's all of our, you know, it's our hope, you know? On my own, I don't have anything. I was on my own all day today, miserable, you know? But in here, I feel good, you know? And I really feel like, so anyway, just the hopelessness, that was my, you know, I really identified with that. Now the next day, as it's still in the psych ward, these three guys came in, these three members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told their stories in this little room, and I would not have listened to a word that those guys had to say unless I was locked up in a psychiatric ward looking to kill time. So I go into this little room, and these guys are telling their stories. They weren't necessarily guys that I would really want to hang out with or anything, but I could tell from what they were saying that they knew, I knew that they were really alcoholic drug addicts. You know, like, I could tell that they weren't bullshitting me. So then they went on to talk about how they got sober and what they did to stay sober and you know, what their lives were like, you know, in sobriety. And it didn't require on my part any blind faith whatsoever in any supernatural, mysterious God at all. Like I didn't need any blind faith, because I was looking at the evidence right before my eyes, plain as day. I knew these guys were the real deal, and looking at them, I could just see the evidence before my eyes that the solution that they were talking about worked. You know, I mean, I just never had any open mind to even listen to anybody talk about that stuff. And looking at these guys, I honestly came to believe that the solution that they were talking about worked, you know? And so that was my step two right there. And after they told their stories, they gave me a copy of the 20 Questions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it, you know, with something of an open mind, I suppose, I read it, and each question just painted me more and more into a corner. And I just thought, like, oh man, you know, here I had this thing I couldn't do anything about, and now I just like listen to these guys, and I found out that you know, that there is something I can do about it. And now I read these 20 questions, and oh damn, I gotta do something. I have to do this, you know. And it was just like kind of that simple, you know. I was just like, I have to do it. And I was like, I thought it sucked, and oh man, but right there I made a decision to just commit myself to these steps and to this solution that these guys are talking about. This is my step 3 right there in that psych ward. And I walked this short little walk down to my little room in the psych ward. And by the time I got down that short little hallway, I had it all figured out. I was like, man, you know, I've been on TV kind of a bunch. You know, like, if I learn how to live clean and sober, you know, I mean, I'm gonna do a lot of good in this world, you know. And I'm thinking to myself right away, my mind takes me automatically to, like, this world is gonna owe me, you know. And I got excited about it, you know. I genuinely got excited. I was like, I told the people in the psych, I mean, I made the decision. I was committed. I told the people in the psych ward, I said, you can let me out now because I'm gonna go to rehab. I'm gonna go to rehab, and I didn't want to go home and pack a bag. I didn't want a couple days to think about it. I wanted to go door to door from the psych ward to the rehab, and I meant 100% business. I was absolutely gonna learn how to live clean and sober because I wanted the world to kiss my butt, basically, you know? And you know, and I meant it. And I can't emphasize enough, you know, like how little it matters what brings you in here. You know, for me, there was this quest for recognition and, you know, like cashing prizes, you know, and I don't care if you come in here to satisfy the judge, to try to keep your job, to get your kids back. It does not matter, you know. It does not matter what brings you in here. It matters what keeps you here, you know. And for me, I found the reason to stay here. I found it in the steps fully, and. You know, I got to the rehab. I did what people were suggesting. They said, get a sponsor. They, you know, they told me, I mean, they gave me the step 1 worksheet. I filled it out and posted it online. You know? Along with a bunch of, I posted all kinds of stuff online about how, you know, everybody needed to look to me as I led by example or whatever, however I were, you know, and like how everybody needed God, you know, like everything that every douchebag move they tell you not to do in the big book, you know, about your new spiritual way of life, you know, that was, but it was the best I could do, you know, and I did get a sponsor. I went through with it as a formality, really, you know, all of my step 1, 2, and 3 rehab worksheets, and I finished reading my 3rd step, you know, to my sponsor, and he said, okay, now right away, it says in the book, we launch right into a course of action. So now we're going to do the 4th step. He told me about the 4th step, how, you know, it's resentment inventory, fear inventory, sex inventory. I was like, sex inventory, what? You know, I never heard that before. That bummed me out, you know. And he said, we start right away, you know, and so my step work notebook, you know, he showed me how we draw the columns, you know, we draw the columns down the pages, and I thought drawing those lines to make those columns was a really strong start, you know. But I did not get to work at filling out I didn't feel, you know, I mean, like a lot. It's not, you know, I'm not gonna lie and say I got right into to writing the 4th step. You know, I was in that rehab, I had about 30 days when I left that rehab, and everybody was telling me, if you want to stay sober, then you're gonna go into sober living. You're not gonna go back into the place and the environment that where you did all the stuff that brought you here, because if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. You know, thankfully I was evicted from the apartment, like I said. You know, the girlfriend that didn't want to get married failed to visit me in the psych ward, so I threw a temper tantrum and broke up with her. So I had no relationship to distract me. While I was in the psych ward, my buddies packed all my belongings, my furniture and everything out out of that apartment into a storage unit. My cell phone went in with it, so I had no numbers to call. I had no phone, no numbers, no relationship, and no apartment to return to. And I had pretty well burned every bridge in my work life, so I had no work to do at all. Across the board, I had such a blessed, convenient, fresh start. And so I went from that rehab and I went into this sober living where it was like, we had groups Monday through Friday from 8 to 2 p.m. and then after that you could come and go as you please. So I was kind of in rehab, but I was kind of in sober living. And one of the groups one day, the counselor guy said, all right, now we're gonna have a four-step group, So everybody just start working, I gave us some worksheets for the four-step, and so I just sat down and I just started writing, Now, the way the four-step is, it's not like, it's all it is cataloging things that make you feel uncomfortable, Generally, we're uncomfortable when we feel angry, when we feel afraid, and when we feel guilty, And so we basically make lists of these three things, So it's like, okay, what makes you feel, what do you feel angry about? And that's the resentment inventory. So in that little group, in that sober living, and I write down my first resentment list. Now, what I did when I wrote this resentment list largely was to write just the names, mostly, of people who had done absolutely nothing but try to help me, who I had shit all over, and then I wrote down their name talking about I'm mad at them, right? And I genuinely believed it. This was the best I could do. I had convinced myself. I was just so delusional, and I was so unwilling to look at my part in the mess that I had made out of my own life, that rather than really, honestly sort of take any responsibility, I was just fuming, just believing all these lies. It was him, it was you, and it just I sat down with my sponsor and I went through this resentment inventory. There were a couple instances where my sponsor said something to the effect of, this person has offended, so we need to pray for them because they're spiritually sick. So put a cross next to their name because that means you're going to pray for them. But mostly, the people that I had written on this resentment list, my sponsor said, put a star next to their name because that indicates that we have to come back and make an amends to that person, Now, my delusion, my delusion could not withstand the scrutiny of this step work, and my sponsor was very loving about it, it all just kind of fell away, and it was just like the fog cleared, with one cut, and there I was sort of staring at my part and this wreck that I had made out of my life, and I was not pleased. I was not pleased at all. And as, sad it is to admit, with 100 days of sobriety, I showed up at my home group, and my home group's at Los Angeles Hospital in Pasadena, California. I showed up, and I raised my hand, and I said I wanted to blow my brains out. I had 100 days sober, and I was talking about all the work I'm putting into the steps. I'm getting out nothing but self-hatred, and I don't want to live, and I want to blow my brains out, And so the good people from my home group, they walked me across the hospital grounds and checked me into Psych ward number 2, right? I had 100 days of sobriety, and I'm checking myself into a psych ward because because I feel like I can't forgive myself. I'm not forgivable, I'm just a bad person, exactly what it says in the 12 and 12, we get in the messy bog. It's pride in reverse, just me thinking about me and on my little pity pot, and I'm just so bad, and so I'm in the psych ward for a couple days, something like that, and I'm writing in my journal, and I make this entry in my journal, and I write, I know there are a lot of people who love me, but I'm just not one of them. And I just kept writing and writing, it was 2 or 3 pages into the journal entry, and then I write the words, fuck, this is what we call self-pity. And it was just I really kind of attribute that moment in that second psych ward where I just called myself out for just being on my pity pot, Sure, I had identified all kinds of stuff in my step work that made me feel bad about myself, but the idea is to identify those things and then discard them, that's the person you don't have to be anymore, And I think that when I was in that psych ward and I wrote that in my journal, I think like there's some kind of a shift, you know, like it's just like, okay, I don't know, I don't want to be that person anymore. And it wasn't about, at some point, recovery for me stopped being about trying to get recognition, you know, and it became me being really desperate to stop being that guy on my four-step, you know. It really, and you know, and that's what's kept me around here, man. And so, like, moving on with the four-step, and then we do the fear inventory, right? And now, like, this is kind of messed up, I'll admit. Like, you have to tell. I mean, the book says that you have to tell, you know, everything that you're afraid of, you know, and that means every secret that you have, because a secret, by definition, means it's something that you're afraid of anybody finding out, you know. So, you know, like on my fear inventory, what I did, and like for a lot of stuff, you know, I wrote down my fears in code, because thank you. Because I wasn't down for anybody, you know, to like find my workbook, you know, and be able to read that stuff, you know. But I would sit down with my sponsor, you know, make an appointment with my sponsor, sit down and go through everything I wrote in order. And then when I got to it, even if it's in code, it was already down, like, it's done. I'm saying it, you know, writing it down, and then I'm gonna, you know. So it's messed up telling somebody all your craziest secrets, but the good news is, in my experience, there was not one secret that was worse after I told my sponsor. You know, there's just not one thing that was worse after. And like, I can honestly say that there's nothing that I consciously held back. You know, you either know you're holding something back or you don't. And I knew I wasn't holding anything back. And I think that that's, you know, really a huge factor in the obsession being lifted. I think really that's kind of what does it, you know. I don't know. I just think that I don't think I would be sober today at all. I mean, the book says if you don't tell all your secrets, you're going to get loaded. So I finished my fifth step. You know, I remember, you know, like steps 6 and 7, like I remember spending a whole month contemplating entire readiness, you know, and then I just realized that I was just camping out and just putting off the rest of the steps. So I went home and I printed up the 7-step prayer, and I taped it to the bottom drawer of my dresser in sober living. Yeah, I got down, I stayed in sober living until I had 2 years of sobriety. And you know, I got down and I said the 7-step prayer. You know, my sponsor today says that the 7-step prayer, it's like, okay, God has removed our obsession to drink and use. So we you know, trust that God can do the same with our defects. So we ask, that's all it is. This is this, you know, step 7. We ask God to remove our defects. Now we can also ask God to remove bad breath, but if we don't brush our teeth, you know, we're probably gonna have fucking bad breath, you know, like, so that's what steps 6 and 7 mean to me, you know, is we've identified our defects, we ask God to remove them, but we got a little part in that too, you know, we gotta kind of, you know. So anyway, so steps 8 and 9, like with me, like, you know, I'm sure some of you guys know I do some stupid stunts for work sometimes, and like I compare like doing like one of my stupid stunts to making an amends. You know, the 9th step and my job are very similar a lot of the time, and I'll tell you how. Because when I'm getting ready to do like a stunt, a lot of the times I know it's gonna hurt. I know it's really scary. I'm dreading it. I'm nervous, and I know that as soon as I get over it, I'm gonna have this sense. As soon as I do it, I'll have this sense of relief, and then and I'll have the video footage, and then it's gonna be this rewarding thing that pays off. You know, and men's are like very much the same way. You know, like I'm dreading it. I'm nervous. I know it's gonna suck. I hate it, and then when it's over, I feel this huge sense of relief, and then there's this like reward. You know, like I'm floating around and I feel great. And before like tough stunts and amends, I have this little thing that I do, and I've always done. Like I assess what it's gonna be like, and I decide it's on, and then I count on my fingers, 1, 2, 3. And that means 1, 2, 3, go. And I have never, to this point in my life, I've never for a stunt or an amends counted 1, 2, 3 on my fingers and then backed out. It's like writing the fear in my fear inventory. It happened once I write it down, and then I just follow through. Same thing with the amends, 1, 2, 3, and then that's the tough part. And then I just follow through with it. And it's just something that's really helped me a lot. Okay, so that's step 9. Now like I started my first sponsor. I've taken one guy all the way through the steps, and he finished his 9th step, he called me up. He said, "Hey, I want to come over and I want to talk about step 10, you know?" And this just so happened to be at a time this year where sure, I've been through the steps, like did basically did the best I could, but I decided to kind of jump out of the steps for a minute there and do something that I knew I should tell somebody about. But I didn't, and I kept it a secret. Because I was keeping the secret, then I wasn't calling my sponsor, because I figured, oh, well, my sponsor he's gonna give me sponsor direction that I'm probably not gonna be interested in, So I kept the secret. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't do anything. I'm not calling my sponsor. And like 3 weeks went by. I didn't call my sponsor for 3 weeks, almost a month even. And I was terrified to not go to meetings. But I'm in the meetings and I'm looking at the steps on the wall, and I'm looking at them thinking, yeah, I'm not practicing them in all my affairs. And I just felt like a fraud, and I was playing with fire, and that secret was gonna get me loaded, man. And then ultimately my sponsor reached out to me and he said, "Hey man, how's life?" And I wrote back, I was like, "Good and horrible." I was like, "Man, I gotta come see you." So I went to go see my sponsor, and he said, "Okay, well, obviously we've got some fear here, so let's take this through the inventory, let's what you're afraid of." And so we did it, and then we're down to, I always worked with my sponsor for 1 hour. And he said, "Okay, we got 5 minutes left, so now pull out a new piece of paper, and write down what an amends would look like to this person you've been keeping the secret from." Like, okay, so I write it down, and I always make a script and go over it with my sponsor, and then I have it, and I'm holding it, and later that day, I just counted on my fingers, I 1, 2, 3, and I made this amends to this person. It turned out that person could not have cared less at all, could not have cared less. And meanwhile, for like this whole almost a month, it was all I could think about. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, and I don't think I ever went like 60 seconds without it being in the forefront of my mind, like this secret, It just absolutely destroyed. Like, this person could have told me to rot in hell and never talk to them again, and it would have been better than what I was doing to myself for that almost a month, and they just didn't care. They didn't care at all. And I did the right thing, and I felt so good, and I came from the dark into the light, and I felt that difference so much. I was floating. When my sponsee showed up to talk about the 10th step that day, I had just made that amends, and I was like, "Dude, I have to tell you this, man." I told him the whole thing. I told my sponsee that how long I hadn't talked to my sponsor. I told him like the secret in every detail. I told him about like the whole story, the whole amends, the whole thing, and how great I felt, and how just how it had happened, and then we talked about step 10. I told him, I said, a lot of people, they fill out like a step 10 checklist, like every night, right out of the big book, every night they'll fill out this like sheet. I said, that's not me, I basically work step 10 sort of as needed, depending on how much pain I'm really in. And, Step 10, I tell him, is steps 1 through 9 on an ongoing basis, and how, if you want to do it every night, that's great. If you want to bring yourself up to speed with steps 1 through 9, when you're in enough pain, that's cool with me too. And so that was our discussion about step 10. And then my sponsee said, after I had shared with him this personal stuff, he says, there's something that I haven't wanted to tell you, and he told me this really this thing he was really ashamed of, and then he said, and there's this other thing that I was really embarrassed about, and it was just like the floodgates opened up, and he's just pouring his heart out to me, and it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And he told me everything that he had to say, and he had already finished all his amends. He said, we're talking about the 10th step. And, we were having our little session, then we're going off to this seminar about meditation, right? And we're going down from my building into my parking garage, getting into my car, and I stop and I say, "Dude, you came over to talk about step 10, and I don't think that what just happened today for both of us, I don't think that it's possible that we could have done a more thorough 10th step, man. I mean, look at you, dude. You just got current in steps 1 through 9, and that's what step 10 is all about. And now look at us, we're getting in a car and we're going to drive to a meditation seminar. We're getting on our step 11, dude. You know, it was just so rad. And of course, you know, that whole process with him and me being here and this whole thing that we're doing is step 12. So thank you all so much.